Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Chapter 14. Well, call him already, Dre said, practically bouncing in place. This is the most exciting thing that's happened all day. No kidding, I said. That's because you've been studying nonstop. Call him Jasp, Dre pleaded dramatically. I rolled my eyes. I sat up in my bed and glanced at Dre, whose eyes were wide with anticipation. Then I raised my arm and tossed my phone in his direction. He yelped, fumbled to catch it, and it clattered onto the floor. You call him, I said, leaning back against my pillows. Since you're so invested. What was that for? Dre groaned as he reached down to pick up my phone. You could have cracked it. But I didn't, I said. Go ahead. Call him. Fine, he grumbled, unlocking my phone. What's your passcode? Dre loves Xander, I replied, trying not to laugh. Cut it out, he snapped. May is the only one in my heart. Seriously, what's the passcode? I told him, and he quickly typed it in. He began scrolling through my contacts, squinting in confusion. You didn't save his number? He asked. I did. Well, I don't see Xander Payton anywhere. Of course not, I said. His name is saved as Rude Bastard. Dre burst out laughing. I should have known. He tapped the contact and the phone immediately started ringing. I sighed and folded my hands behind my head. After a few rings, Xander picked up. It's about time you called, he said, his voice filling the room as Dre put him on speaker. Trying way too hard, Dre cleared his throat and attempted to deepen his voice. What do you have to say to me? You're not Jasper, Xander said instantly. Why do you have his phone, Dre? Oh, come on. How did you know? Dre moaned. I thought I nailed the impression. Not convincing enough. What? I sat up straight and marched over to snatch my phone back. There you are, Jasper, Xander chuckled. What do you mean, not convincing enough? I said. What's that supposed to imply? Relax, Xander laughed. I just knew that would get you on the phone. I groaned. Unbelievable. My house, he joked. Oh, please, I said, rolling my eyes. Just kidding, Xander said. But hey, take me off speaker. Wait, Dre protested. Why can't I listen? Is this something private? He winked at me. I pretended not to gag. Nah, Xander said. I just think you should get back to studying. I'm right behind you in the rankings, remember? Dre gasped. Oh no. He whirled around to face his work again. I took Xander off speaker and brought the phone to my ear. What do you want? Before you get annoyed, just listen, Xander said, his tone suddenly serious. Okay, what is it? I heard your phone call earlier. You what? My voice shot up. Listen, Jasper, Xander continued. My car wouldn't start, so I called my sister to help. While I was waiting, I overheard part of your conversation. Listened? I whispered, feeling embarrassment creep up on me. Jasper, I know how you feel. And how would you know that? I don't have a mom either, he said quietly. Or a dad. I went still. Jasper? Are you there? Yeah, I finally answered. You may not believe me, but I really do understand what you're going through. Why are you telling me this? I asked, unsure how to handle the sudden sincerity in his voice. Because when I found out there were people who understood my kind of pain, it made me feel less alone. And I guess I just wanted you to feel the same. To know you're not alone either. His words didn't sound anything like the Xander I knew. It was strange, soft, honest, almost gentle. Unusual, I muttered. I'm not like you. You're right, he said. Your parents didn't abandon you. Abandon? My parents left me with my aunt when I was 2, he explained. My sister was 1. We don't remember it happening. I get it. I didn't know how to respond. But you said your dad was the one who was sick at home, I said. He groaned softly. Did I really say that? Yeah. So, what are you hiding? Nothing, he said too quickly. There you go again being mysterious, I sighed. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. But really, how do you feel now that you know my past is similar to yours? I don't know, I admitted. You just poured your whole life story on me. He laughed lightly. I didn't expect much from you anyway. I guess I just needed to talk. Sorry it had to be you. It's fine, I stammered. I let Hayden talk to me all the time. Mostly about my sister, I bet, Xander said. How'd you know? They dated, he said. I was the one who introduced them. So it's your fault. My fault? Please. I never wanted my sister dating one of my closest friends. It was out of my hands. Oh. But hey, Hayden's single now, he added casually. Why aren't you giving it a shot? Why should I tell you that? I muttered. I wish you never overheard anything. Then maybe I should tell you a secret to make up for it, Xander said. I don't care enough to want one of your secrets. He laughed softly. Fine. I'll make up for it another way. How? I'll help you, Xander said. With Hayden. Chapter 15. Don't even tell me, I said. Another self-proclaimed god of love? Dre slowly turned in his chair, giving me a look. God of love? Xander echoed, immediately laughing. What kind of nonsense is Dre spreading now? How'd you know it was him? I asked, smiling over at Dre. I couldn't imagine anyone else saying something like that, Xander replied. The guy thinks he's Cupid, I told him. Just because he gave me 1 minute alone with Hayden. I could do way better than that, Xander said. But why do you even want to help me with something like this? I asked. Well, wouldn't life be a little better if things worked out between the two of you? He said gently. It might ease a bit of the pain you're carrying. I still don't understand why you're willing to help me, I said. Maybe because I wish someone had been there for me when I was struggling with the fact that my parents left, he answered quietly. But I don't need your help, I said. I don't want to ruin my friendship with Hayden. I get that, Xander said. But you never know. Maybe Hayden's never seen you that way before. But once you tell him how you feel, he's going to think about it. Believe me. I hadn't looked at it that way. And if what Xander said was true, maybe I didn't have anything to lose. You sound experienced, I said. He paused. I've had a few relationships. And? I nudged. Are you actually interested in hearing about them? He asked, and I could practically hear him smirking. I need to know how skilled you think you are if you're going to help me, I said. Well, he began, none of them were too serious. Just casual until one of us ended things. My last relationship was different, though. How different? I asked. I really loved her. So, you didn't love the others? Not the same way, he replied softly. And what happened? Why did it end? That's enough story time for now, he said, dodging. But I'm surprised you're open to having me as your tutor and your relationship coach. Relationship coach? I repeated. That sounds terrible. Xander snickered. So, what's it going to be? Do you want my help or not? I thought for a moment and sighed. I don't need help from anyone. If anything, I'll just use you to answer my questions. Sure, he said easily. You're being surprisingly considerate, I told him. It's not like you. When am I not considerate? He asked. To me, I corrected. Like when you almost got me in trouble. I thought you hated me. I thought you hated me, Xander said. I just like teasing you. Why though? I asked honestly. I don't know, he admitted. You're just interesting. You're not like everyone else. Everyone else? You're the first person who ever disliked me that strongly, he said. And I guess I wanted to change that. Not everyone you meet will like you, I reminded him. If there's a chance I can change that, why wouldn't I try? So, you'll take any chance you get, huh? I see you figured me out, he said. But yes. Admirable, I said. Still not enough to make me change my opinion of you. That's fine, he said calmly. It'll change soon. We kept talking, shifting to random topics, and somehow it felt normal. Surprisingly normal. Xander was easy to talk to. Our conversation went on for another hour, and I didn't even realize it until I yawned and checked the time. "You tired?" Xander asked. "A little," I said. "We've been talking forever." "Oh wow," Xander muttered. "It's been 2 hours." "You didn't know either?" "No. It went by fast." It felt strange, talking to Xander for so long without arguing. Somehow, tonight, he'd become the comfort I hadn't realized I needed. I never expected that. "This is weird," I admitted. "I didn't mind talking to you that much." Xander laughed. "I'm not that awful, am I?" "Don't get ahead of yourself," I said. "You're still just my tutor. I need to at least be polite to my tutor." "I didn't mind talking to you either," he said. "That was nice." "Don't start calling me every night," I warned. "Those calls are usually reserved for Hayden." "I'll keep that in mind," he said. "But you should sleep. I'll see you tomorrow." "Don't forget you're tutoring me after class in the library," I reminded him. "I know, Jasper. Good night." Before I could answer, he hung up. "What was that?" Dre asked, taking off his glasses. "You two were arguing the first hour, then suddenly you were confessing your feelings the next." "Idiot," I muttered, turning away from him. "I feel weird," Dre said. "Huh. How did you talk to Xander like he's your friend now?" "Just go to sleep," I mumbled into my pillow. "I don't even know." Dre snickered. "Cupid senses a love triangle." My pillow hit him square in the face. "Dude," he yelped, tossing it back. I put it under my head again. "You never know when to be quiet," I groaned. "But Cupid." "You are not Cupid, Dre," I cut in. "I will never call you that." "Someone's defensive," he teased. "Because Xander will never be part of a love triangle," I said firmly. "Okay," Dre said. "But I'm rarely wrong about these things. There's a first time for everything. Just sleep already." "Fine, fine. Good night, Jasp." "Good night." I closed my eyes, trying to sleep. But no matter how hard I tried, it just wouldn't come. Instead, my thoughts drifted back to Xander. It was strange. And a part of me didn't mind seeing him tomorrow. Chapter 16. The next morning, I woke up exhausted. It felt like I had barely slept at all. And I knew exactly who was responsible for that: Xander Payton. I still couldn't wrap my head around how similar our stories were, how we'd gone through almost the same kind of pain. It didn't make sense. How could someone like me have anything in common with someone like him? But what confused me most was how easy he was to talk to. The moment he was on the phone, I just kept talking. And strangely, I didn't mind. But I could never let him know that. I had said something like that last night, but I refused to acknowledge it again. I'd pretend it never happened, pretend I never felt anything. The walk to my mathematics class was short. When I arrived, I unpacked my bag and rested my head on the desk, like I always did before class. A few minutes later, I heard the chair beside me slide back as someone sat down. I was too worn out to look up. "Didn't sleep last night?" That deep, familiar voice made my face heat up instantly. So I kept my head down. "No," I muttered. A low laugh rumbled next to me. "I wonder why." Of course, he knew why. "You really irritate me," I said, my voice muffled against the desk. "That's not what it sounded like last night," Xander replied, and I knew he was grinning. I finally lifted my head and met his eyes. His light green eyes pulled me in so quickly I forgot what I was going to say. "Last night," I stammered, clearing my throat. "I was tired. I didn't know what I was saying." "Sure. Keep telling yourself that," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I knew you'd come up with an excuse." "It's not an excuse," I muttered. "Get over yourself." "You're—" "Good morning, everyone," Professor Bennington announced as he walked in. "Let's get started right away so we stay on pace for Friday." I groaned quietly. "Friday? The exam? We still on after class?" Xander whispered. "Of course," I whispered back. "I need to pass." He smirked slightly. Professor Bennington continued his lecture, but I instantly tuned him out. I wanted to believe I'd do great on Friday, but realistically? Probably not. When class ended, I slowly stood up, still drained. Xander swung his bag over his shoulder and stepped out from behind the desk. I dragged my feet behind him. "Wow," Xander said, bumping his shoulder lightly into mine. "You really didn't sleep." I rubbed my face in frustration. "You wouldn't stop talking last night." "Me?" he asked. "You're the one who kept me on the phone." My face heated again. "It's your fault. You're really easy to talk to." "Oh no." Xander stopped walking. I turned back to look at him, and there he was, grinning wide, looking annoyingly perfect. His earring glinted under the lights, and his dark hair fell across his forehead. His eyes were bright. And for a second I realized he was attractive. But I'd never tell him. "What are you doing?" I asked, frowning. "Call me tonight," he said simply. My eyes widened. "You're unbelievable. I'm not calling you." "We'll see," he said, walking again. I shoved his arm, making him stumble slightly. "You're annoying." "Good luck on Friday," he said, speeding up. I quickened my pace and, without thinking, grabbed his hand to stop him. He paused, eyes flicking to our hands before meeting mine. He raised an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. Instead of answering, he gently squeezed my hand. Warmth shot up my arms and I froze. He leaned in just slightly, close enough that I could hear my own heartbeat. "What?" I whispered. His eyes dropped to my lips and I forgot how to breathe. "I'm going to the library," he said calmly, still looking at my lips. "What?" I immediately let go of his hand and stepped back. "You're not leaving?" I asked. He lifted his gaze to mine. "You want to pass Friday's exam, don't you?" A few minutes later, we were in the library. I sat across from him, pulling out my textbook and notes. He flipped open his book and leaned forward. "Let's start here," he said, pointing to a problem on the page. I stared at it like it was written in another language. I really needed to start paying attention in class. "Write it down," Xander instructed. "Oh," I mumbled, scribbling it into my notebook. "Now do it," he said. I looked up at him, feeling defeated. "I don't know how." Chapter 17. Xander's eyes narrowed. "You're joking. There's no way you don't know how to solve that." I narrowed my own eyes back. I said I don't know how. "That's the basics," Xander said, his tone firm. "If you don't get this, it means you're struggling with the whole unit." "Xander, that's why you're tutoring me," I muttered. "I don't understand any of this." He sighed, clearly frustrated. "Then what do you even do in class? You don't seem to listen at all." He leaned across the table and pointed at my notebook. "Use this formula," he said, sliding a sheet filled with formulas toward me. "Just plug in the variables they give you and solve for the missing ones. It's not that complicated." "Maybe not for you," I mumbled. "This is my first time seeing that formula." Xander tapped my notebook again, prompting me to focus. "Start working on it." I followed his instructions and wrote the formula down, carefully plugging in the numbers. When I finished the first step, I turned my notebook toward him. "Done." He looked over it and shook his head before turning the notebook back to me. "That's only half the problem." I groaned internally. I really needed to pay attention in class. Despite how clueless I felt, Xander kept helping me. He answered every question and walked me through each step. At one point, I got stuck again and slid my notebook toward him. As he reached for it, his sleeve shifted just enough for me to see the inside of his arm. I froze. Xander noticed immediately. His eyes flicked to mine, and in a split second he tugged his sleeve back down and pulled his hand away. "It's nothing." "Xander, are you okay?" I asked gently. "Believe me." "What's going on?" I whispered, my voice barely steady. "Why would you?" "Just finish the problems, Jasper," he muttered, staring at the table. "Xander." "Drop it," he said sharply. "I'm fine." "You're clearly not," I said softly. "Please talk to me." He shook his head. "Don't act like you're my therapist." "I told you I'm fine." I leaned forward. "I'm not trying to be anything except someone who cares. I don't want you hurting yourself." He finally met my eyes, and something in his expression wavered. "Why?" he whispered. "Just leave it alone." "I can't," I said. And I can't believe I'm about to tell you this. He didn't say a word. I'm not going to leave you alone. Not after everything. Do you know how I'd feel if anything happened to you? I won't do anything, he cut in quietly. I'm not brave enough. I fell silent. I can't believe you're the one who found out, he murmured. Nothing's going to happen, so why can't you let it go? Because I care about you. Xander's eyes widened, stunned into stillness. I sighed. You were right, you were completely right. I didn't sleep at all last night because of you. I couldn't stop thinking about everything you said, everything you shared. Somehow, even after everything I've been through, talking to you made me feel understood. Less alone. Xander stared at me silently, unreadable. I don't know why I'm saying this, I admitted. Maybe it's foolish. But the idea of us being friends doesn't feel impossible anymore. Sure, you can be annoying sometimes, but there are things about you that outweigh that. He blinked. Like what? You really want me to say it? I groaned. You can't just say something like that without explaining. I looked at him, feeling my cheeks warm. It's the little things. How you helped Hayden's mom cook for everyone and stayed to wash dishes when no one else offered. How you checked on me after I talked to my dad. And now, how you're tutoring me even though I'm terrible at math. His eyes never left mine as I spoke, which only made my heart race more. After a moment he finally said, Let's go. What? We're not finished. Just pack your things, he said, already gathering his stuff. He slung his bag over his shoulder, then walked around the table, leaned over me, collected my notebook and papers, and slipped them into my bag. He handed it to me and I stood, confused. Where are we going? I asked as I followed him out of the library. There's still more to study. Xander kept walking quickly, forcing me to speed up. Xander, I called. He stopped and turned to face me. Jasper, he said, could you please stop talking for a second? My jaw dropped. Seriously? You're telling me to stop talking? After I just told you all that stuff, I never planned on saying out loud. He held my gaze, his expression unreadably calm. We're going to my house. Chapter 18. I froze. Your house? But why can't we just? Jasper, he interrupted, sounding tense. I don't feel comfortable talking about this in the library. Oh. I fell silent. Xander unlocked his car and slid into the driver's seat. Get in. I quietly got into the passenger side, and he pulled out of the parking lot. After a few moments, he spoke. It wasn't just one thing. Over time, everything kept piling up until I couldn't handle it anymore. I started thinking life would be easier if I wasn't here. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to follow through. Every time I reached that point, I couldn't do it. I was scared and ashamed. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what to say, and I didn't want to make things worse. Xander, there's no easy way out of pain, I said softly. But that doesn't make you weak. If anything, the fact that something inside you stops you says a lot. That's the reason you're still here. And next time you feel overwhelmed, instead of hurting yourself, call me. Please. He didn't answer. The silence worried me, but he just kept driving. Neither of us spoke again until we reached his house. I was surprised to realize he lived in the same neighborhood as Hayden. I followed him inside. The house was small but warm, filled with photos on every wall. School pictures of Xander and Paisley, snapshots from sports events, smiling group photos with friends. His aunt was in the kitchen, but he walked straight to the back of the house and into his room. After I entered, he closed the door and sat on the edge of his bed. I lingered by the doorway. Come sit, he said quietly, patting the space beside him. I swallowed, nervous about what he was about to share, but sat next to him. Where do I even start? He whispered. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share, I said. I don't want to pressure you. It's okay, he said. I'd rather someone else know, so I don't end up doing something I can't take back. My heart tightened. He was trusting me. Okay, he said, taking a breath. You'd think my parents leaving was what pushed me. But it wasn't that. I fell into a really dark place about 2 years ago. And the strange thing is, before that, I was happy. Really happy. But then one day everything changed. His expression shifted, and for the first time I could clearly see the sadness in his eyes. Without thinking, I reached out and gently intertwined my fingers with his. He looked down at our hands before continuing. "Do you remember Vivi West?" he asked. The name hit me. I nodded slowly. "So, you've heard what happened? How she passed away?" I looked down. Vivi had taken her own life 2 years ago. The whole town was in shock. She had always seemed bright, involved, and full of energy. I remembered her from school events, always smiling. "I couldn't help her," Xander said quietly. I lifted my eyes to meet his. "I didn't know she was struggling while we were together," he said. "I didn't see the signs. And when she was gone, everything fell apart. She was my first real love. I cared about her more than anyone knew. When she died, I wanted to follow her. Every day felt unbearable. And that's when I started hurting myself. Seeing someone like Xander, someone so strong, so put together, admit something so painful made my chest ache." "Xander," I said gently, "you can't blame yourself for what happened to Vivi. You loved her. You were there for her in ways you probably don't even realize. But you need to keep living. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. After everything, you're still here, still trying. And now that I know what you've gone through, I'm not going anywhere. You told me once that when it feels like the world is against you, there's always at least one person who isn't. The same goes for you. I'll be that person." Xander looked up at me, and for the first time, tears filled his eyes. One fell down his cheek, and that was all it took for me to pull him into a hug. He leaned into me, his arms wrapping tightly around my back as he buried his face into my shoulder. Warmth spread through my chest as I held him, rubbing small circles on his back while he cried quietly. "I'm here, Xander," I whispered. "You're not alone." We stayed like that for a few minutes, wrapped in each other's arms, until a high-pitched cry suddenly echoed from the room next door. Xander quickly pulled away, wiping his eyes. "Sorry," he muttered before standing and leaving the room. I stared after him, stunned, not just by the intimacy of the moment we'd shared, but by the unexpected sound from the room beside his. A moment later, he returned, carrying a little girl who looked about 2 years old. Her cheeks were tear-streaked and rosy. Xander gently ran his hand through her blonde hair, comforting her just like I'd seen him do with Professor Michael's son. "I didn't know you had another sister," I said softly. Xander met my eyes. "She's not my sister," he said. He shifted the little girl in his arms. "She's my daughter." Chapter 19. And suddenly, everything made sense. Why Xander was so patient with Lenny, why he seemed more mature than most people our age. He'd been forced to grow up long before any of us. "She's the one who was sick," Xander said quietly. "Not my dad." He walked over, carefully holding the little girl in his arms, then sat on the edge of his bed. The moment he looked down at her, she stopped crying and snuggled closer. He gently brushed his fingers through her short blonde hair until her eyes slowly closed and she fell asleep. "Vivi," he whispered. She took her life shortly after Hadley was born. So Hadley never got the chance to know her mom. I've been taking care of her since then, with my aunt helping out during the day. Honestly, I don't know what I'd do without her." "Xander, I had no idea," I said softly. "How did you keep all of this to yourself? You would have kept hiding it if I hadn't walked in." He sighed and stared at the ceiling. "One reason I always stop myself before doing anything reckless is because I think of my aunt, how she took us in and loved us like a parent. And then there's Hadley, my daughter. I don't want her growing up without both parents like I did. But I also can't imagine being away from her. She's the only piece of Vivi I have left." "There," I told him gently. "Those are your reasons to stay strong. Life gets hard, but you're tougher than you think. You've already proven that." Xander looked back at me slowly, studying my face. "Like a different person right now." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You've never said anything that kind to me before," he said, a small smile forming. "What's going on?" I looked away, embarrassed. "Stop it. I say nice things to people all the time. It's just that some people don't usually see that side of me," especially when they know how to annoy me. There you go, he chuckled. Back to normal. But you're the only one I've ever told. Nobody else knows I'm a dad. And nobody knows about the things I did to myself. I won't tell anyone, I said. I'm not like that. I know. He smiled softly. Thanks, Jasper. The look he gave me, warm, sincere, gentle, made my heart skip for a reason I couldn't explain. And before I knew it, I was smiling back, wider than I ever had without realizing it. Wow, Jasper, he said with a grin. You should smile more often. Huh. I blinked. You just looked. Xander, a voice called from outside, probably his aunt. Oh no, he muttered, glancing at Hadley and then at me. I need to help with dinner. I'll call Hayden to pick me up. Don't, he said quickly. I'll drive you home after dinner. I raised a brow. Okay. But, would you mind holding her? He asked cautiously. My eyes widened. Hold his daughter? She's going to cry, I warned. I've never held a baby before. Well, now's your chance, he said gently, placing Hadley in my arms. I made sure to support her head, holding my breath. She didn't wake up, I whispered in disbelief. She's a deep sleeper, he said with a soft smile. I'll be back soon. When he left, I stared down at Hadley. She shifted slightly and moved closer, resting against my chest. I held her carefully. She was adorable. And surprisingly, holding her made me feel calm. I did what Xander had done and slowly brushed her hair with my fingers. But then her eyes fluttered open. My heart dropped. She'd realize I wasn't Xander any second now. Her bright green eyes, just like her father's, looked up at me. For a moment, she simply studied my face, and then her lips began to tremble. No, don't cry, I whispered, wiping her tears gently. Shoo, it's okay. Daddy's coming back soon. But she cried louder, and right on cue, Xander returned. It's okay, he said, lifting her from my lap. She cries when someone new holds her. He held her close, rubbing her back. Daddy's here, Hadley. It's okay. I watched from the bed, unsure what to do or say. She'll calm down soon, he said, peeking over Hadley's shoulder with a reassuring smile. Dinner's almost ready. Come on. I followed him to the kitchen. His aunt stood over the stove, stirring a pot. She turned and smiled warmly when she saw me, and I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Jasper, Xander's classmate. I know, she said, smiling even wider. This is the first time Xander has brought a friend home. Really? I asked, raising an eyebrow at him. Don't start, he muttered. I just don't usually invite people over. He placed Hadley in her high chair, now calm again. I counted the plates, 5 of them. But there were only 4 of us. Then the front door opened. I'm home, a voice called out. Chapter 20. Xander's eyes flicked toward me the moment his sister walked into the kitchen. Paisley Peyton. I held myself back from reacting. Hayden still cared about her, and starting anything now wouldn't help anyone. Paisley's gaze locked onto mine as she entered, and without hesitation, she sat right beside me. The look she gave me was sharp, almost challenging, and it took effort to keep my expression neutral. Jasper, Paisley said, her voice tight with judgment. What are you doing here? I turned toward her calmly. I'm here because your brother invited me. Her dark curls swayed as she snapped her head toward Xander. You invited him? Out of all people, you chose him? You really must not be thinking clearly. It's been so long since you've even dated. Paisley, Xander said slowly, his tone unexpectedly firm. He's joking. I don't like him that way. But even if I did, I'd expect your support. And after everything that happened with Vivi, I'm still figuring out if I'm ready for anything at all. His words made my heart dip slightly, though I wasn't sure why. Paisley lowered her head, embarrassed by her own harshness toward him. I still couldn't understand why she disliked me so openly. We'd barely spoken before today. And honestly, that was how I preferred it. Xander's aunt began placing dishes on the table. Hadley's little hands reached excitedly toward the food, and Xander smiled at her with such pure affection that it softened the whole room. Seeing him as a young father felt surreal, yet the way he looked at his daughter explained everything, every sacrifice, every quiet strength. "So, Jasper," Xander's aunt asked as we ate, "how did you meet Xander?" I didn't think he had many friends. I glanced up, remembering our first meeting, how he'd left a terrible impression. Xander flicked his eyes toward me, giving a tiny, almost pleading shake of his head. I smirked. "Well," I said casually, "I figured I should become friends with someone who so generously handed me a free pack of cigarettes." His aunt's eyes widened. She turned to Xander, frowning. "I thought you quit smoking after Hadley was born. Don't tell me you picked it up again." Xander shot me a glare so sharp it nearly pierced through me. "I did quit," he said quickly. "I got the pack from Chase and gave it to Jasper. I don't smoke." "Then why would Chase give you cigarettes if he knows you quit?" she pressed. "Doesn't know," Xander muttered, still glaring at me. "Can we please drop it? I don't want to talk about this right now." His aunt sighed gently. "Just take care of yourself, Xander. That's all I ask." "I know," he murmured, glancing away. The room fell quiet as we finished eating. After a moment, I looked at Xander again. He must have felt it, because he slowly lifted his eyes to meet mine. He raised an eyebrow. I quickly looked down, flustered. Without a word, Xander stood up, gathered his plate, then walked around the table collecting everyone else's, except mine. I grabbed mine myself and followed him to the sink. He started washing dishes while Paisley picked up Hadley from her high chair. I took the moment to speak. "I'm sorry," I said awkwardly. "It's just—" "Yeah," he cut me off gently. "I did the same thing to you before. I get it." "You do?" I asked. "You seemed pretty annoyed." He paused, then lifted his eyes to mine. Before I could react, his hand, covered in soap bubbles, shot up and gently pressed against my face. The bubbles slid down my cheeks as my mouth opened in shock. "We're even now," he said with a small smirk, turning back to the dishes. "We were even the moment I mentioned the cigarettes," I muttered, wiping my face. He kept smirking, which set off my impulsiveness, as always. I reached over him, grabbed the sink's nozzle, and aimed it his way. His eyes widened. "You wouldn't," he warned. "You think I won't?" I teased, fingers on the faucet. He raised his sudsy hands in surrender. "If you spray me, Jasper, you're buying me a new shirt." "It's just water," I said, grinning. "Jasper," he said in a deeper, cautioning tone. I turned the nozzle. Water burst out, soaking Xander completely. His aunt let out a startled yelp, and Paisley shot me a disapproving glare before they both left the kitchen, leaving us alone. Xander's gray sweater darkened with water. He wiped his face, then pushed his damp hair back. "You actually did it," he said. "I'm not scared of you," I replied, unable to hide my grin. "Well," he said, grabbing the hem of his sweater, "I guess I have no choice then." He lifted it off slowly, revealing his toned upper body. I froze, eyes widening despite myself. He tossed his drenched sweater onto a chair and turned to face me again, standing there casually, completely unbothered by the fact that he was shirtless. All I could do was stare. "Oh, wow," I breathed, unable to form anything more coherent. Chapter 21. Xander lifted his light green eyes toward me, raising an eyebrow as a small, knowing smile curved at the corner of his lips. He took a slow step closer, and my breath hitched without warning. I still didn't understand how someone could look that effortlessly confident. His hand rose toward my face, and I froze as his fingers brushed under my chin, guiding it upward until I had no choice but to meet his eyes. "My eyes are up here," he said softly. I quickly pushed his hand away. "I know." Xander chuckled, a deep, warm sound. "You can look if you want to, Jasper. I don't mind." My mouth dropped slightly in disbelief. "You amaze me with how dramatic you can be every single day." He laughed again, and this time I stepped closer to him. His expression shifted in surprise as I gently took his hand, turning his arm until the faded scars on his wrist were visible. He immediately tried to pull away. "Let go," he said quietly. "Then stop hurting yourself," I replied. I don't want to see new marks show up here again. You're stubborn, he sighed. Those scars, they're old. They'll always be there. But I'm going to try what you said. So don't be surprised if I call you next time. I smirked, remembering the advice I had given. Call someone instead of giving in to the urge. Whatever works, I said, releasing his hand. His bare chest was still only inches away, and he didn't look away. He simply watched me. What? I asked, frowning a little. You're driving me crazy, he murmured. I rolled my eyes. I'm trying to be nice, and that's what you choose to say? Suddenly, Xander lifted his hand and cupped my cheek. My breath caught again. His eyes flicked down toward my lips, and I narrowed mine. What are you doing? I asked, not moving away from his touch even though confusion buzzed through my mind. When my hand rested on his chest, he glanced down at it, just before I gave him a push to create some distance. He stumbled back, looking at me, startled. What? I asked. Why won't you tell me what you were doing? Xander turned away, running a hand over his face. Just forget it. He returned to the sink, and I watched him in silence, still trying to understand what had just happened. I took a hesitant step toward him. What were you doing? I asked again. Nothing, he muttered. You had something on your face. No, I didn't, I argued. Just tell me the truth. He suddenly shut off the faucet and turned around. His expression had changed, serious, focused. Would you rather I didn't stop? He asked quietly. What? I whispered. He stepped closer, his chest just inches away again. His hand rose, brushing my cheek with his thumb. His gaze flickered down to my lips once more as he leaned in, close enough to feel his breath, but far enough that he could still pull away. Stop me, he whispered. I stood frozen. Jasper, his voice grew lower. Push me away. But I couldn't move. Every part of me felt locked in place. Just like before, he continued softly. Push me. He stepped even closer, and I felt his forehead almost touch mine. I can't, he breathed out, almost to himself. Forget it. Before I could process what was happening, Xander leaned forward and gently pressed his lips against mine. I froze in shock. He pulled back just a little, just enough to breathe, before resting his forehead against mine. And to my own surprise, I found myself lifting a hand to the back of his head. I didn't pull him closer this time, but I also didn't pull away. I let the moment exist, soft, confusing, overwhelming. Xander exhaled shakily, as if he couldn't believe what he was doing. He glanced into my eyes, about to say something, but footsteps echoed down the hallway. Xander immediately stepped back, straightening just as a small voice called out. Daddy. Chapter 22. Hadley's little legs carried her into the kitchen, her big green eyes locking onto her father. Xander immediately stepped away from me, crouching down to scoop her into his arms as she giggled. Without another glance, he walked out of the kitchen, leaving me leaning against the cabinets, still trying to process what had just happened. What just happened? I thought, shaking my head. My mind felt scrambled, and I knew I needed to get back to my dorm. Xander must have realized the same because he returned a moment later, this time wearing a shirt, probably after handing Hadley back to Paisley. I'll bring you back, he said, hand awkwardly resting on the back of his neck. I sighed. Let's go, I replied, following him to his car. Once I slid into the passenger seat, he pulled out of the driveway for the 15-minute drive back to campus. Neither of us spoke at first. The quiet stretched awkwardly, and I felt like the ride was the longest one ever. To fill the silence, I turned on the radio, and a foreigner's song began to play. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. Xander smirked. Should I show you? He teased. I rolled my eyes but grinned. Shut up. He laughed, and the tension between us eased a little. By the time we reached the university parking lot, the awkwardness had faded into a strange, comfortable silence. I unbuckled my seatbelt and opened the door. Thanks, I said softly. Xander met my eyes and gave a small nod before speeding off. I leaned against the car, my mind replaying the earlier moments, how helpless I'd felt when he kissed me, how I had kissed him back, and the warmth of him so close to me. It doesn't make sense, I thought. I didn't even like Xander, yet I had just made out with him. And it would have continued if Hadley hadn't interrupted. By the time I reached my dorm, Dre was at his desk, glasses perched on his nose. "You're back late," he said. "I thought Xander was just tutoring you." "He did," I replied quickly. "And that's all he did." I headed to my bed, mind buzzing with thoughts of Xander. Frustrated, I grabbed my pillow and slammed it against the wall. "Geez, Jasper," Dre said, turning in his chair. "If I didn't know better, I'd say something actually happened between you two with the way you're acting." "Nothing happened," I said sharply. Dre smiled knowingly. "You keep forgetting Cupid is your roommate, Jasp." "We must have a third roommate then, because the only person I see is you," I muttered, collapsing on my bed. I couldn't let Dre know I had kissed Xander. He would never let me live it down. I closed my eyes, exhausted. Too much had happened today. But then I remembered I hadn't spoken to Hayden, and we usually called each other at night. I grabbed my phone, unlocking it, only to see an incoming call. I smiled. Hayden must be calling. "Hey," a deep voice said, and my eyes went wide. "Wait, Xander." I stammered. "Sorry," he said quickly. "For earlier." I stayed silent. "I don't know what came over me, Jasper," he continued. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry." I exhaled. "It's fine. Partly my fault too," I admitted. "Partly yours." "Well, I haven't kissed anyone in a while," I mumbled. And I couldn't resist. Dre spun around in his chair, eyes wide. "You kissed someone?" he practically shouted, making Xander laugh in the background. "Turn around," I groaned. Who was it?" he pressed. "None of your business," I snapped, waving him off. "Wait, was it really Xander?" he asked, moving closer. "No," I hissed. "I'll tell you later." "You're going to tell him?" Xander teased. "No way," I said firmly. "He needs to get back to studying," I added, glancing at Dre, who reluctantly returned to his desk. "But Jasper," Dre said again, grinning, "you said you couldn't resist him." My face warmed instantly and I laughed nervously. Did I? I didn't mean anything by it." Xander chuckled. "You're terrible at lying." "I'm not lying, Xander," I said firmly. Dre whipped around again. "You said Xander?" I groaned inwardly. There was no way out of this. "Don't tell anyone," I warned. Chapter 23. Dre beamed at me, his grin impossibly wide. "I knew it," he whispered. "Jasp, I so knew it. Remember when I said I sensed a love try-in?" "Dre," I sighed, cutting him off. "It's not like that. I don't even know how it happened. Just, don't tell anyone." He frowned but gave me a reassuring look. "Who do you think I am?" "Don't worry, I won't tell a soul, Jasp." "You'd better not," I said, watching as he returned to his desk with a smug smile. I exhaled, staring at the ceiling. "I can't believe that just happened," I muttered. "I know," Xander said softly on the other end of the phone. "I don't know what came over me. I don't go around kissing people whenever I please." I laughed despite myself. "I hope not." There was a pause before he added, "But I was kind of hoping you wouldn't mind too much." My eyes widened. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked carefully, each word deliberate. He hesitated, then said, I like to think I'm not terrible at, kissing." I snorted. "There's no way I'm answering that." "You don't have to," he replied. "You kissed me back, Jasper." "Because you started it, Xander," I said, trying to sound calm. "I'd do it again," he said simply. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "You would." Xander's laughter echoed through the line. "I wish you could have seen your face." I groaned. "You're impossible." I ended the call, embarrassed and secretly a little thrilled. "Too soon?" Xander teased. "Don't push it," I said. "It's like you can't help yourself." You annoy me too," he said quietly. "I do? I haven't even said anything." "Exactly," his voice rumbled. "I'm annoyed that I'm the only one who seems to care that we kissed." I froze, my mouth hanging open. I started. "Bye." And just like that, the call ended. I dropped my phone on the bed, staring at the ceiling in disbelief. My mind kept returning to Xander, trying to rationalize it. He was just mysterious, confusing, and frustrating, and that was exactly why I was drawn to him. Despite my resistance, a part of me couldn't ignore it. Xander was falling for me, and I couldn't blame him. Another sleepless night passed, as had become routine. Morning came slowly, and I made my way to the math lecture hall at a leisurely pace. My thoughts kept returning to Xander, and even though everything seemed normal, I couldn't stop replaying what had happened. I decided the best thing to do was pretend it never happened. Halfway to class, my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out to see a message from Hayden. "Hayden, hey, the guys are coming over tonight if you and Dre want to swing by." I smiled and quickly typed back, "Me? Sure, not positive if I can drag Dre along, but I'll be there." My mood brightened instantly as I continued walking. I was one of the first to arrive, as usual, and sat in my regular spot, resting my head on my hands. I figured I could casually ask Xander later if he was going to Hayden's tonight, hopefully avoiding an awkward topic. I closed my eyes until the professor arrived. I looked to the side. Xander wasn't there. He was never late. I pushed the thought aside. Maybe he was helping Hadley or dealing with his sister. The lecture went on, though I barely paid attention. When class ended, I thought about calling Xander but decided against it. He'd probably tease me, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Excited instead for Hayden's get-together, I focused on that. By nightfall, I realized I had no way to get to Hayden's. Dre didn't have a car, and I certainly couldn't ask Hayden once the guys were already there. "What's wrong?" Dre asked from his desk. "I'm supposed to go to Hayden's, but I have no way to get there," I explained. He scratched his head. "I'd offer, but I don't have a car either." "You'd do that for me?" I teased. "I thought you were all about the books." "Shut up," he muttered, but I caught a small grin. "Just ask Xander. I'm sure he's going." "No," I said quickly, remembering. Dre leaned in, pointing a finger. "Still embarrassed after kissing the rude guy? That tells me only one thing, you've got the hots for her." I yelped, grabbed my pillow, and waved it at him. "I'm fixing my bed." Dre covered his face, sighing. "You're impossible." I laughed and lowered the pillow. "Should I really ask him?" "Do what?" he asked. "Ask Xander for a ride," I said. "That's the only way you're getting there," he said, shrugging. I groaned, pulled out my phone, and typed a message to Xander. "Me? Mind giving me a ride to Hayden's?" Chapter 24. I stared at my phone, anxiously waiting for a reply from Xander. I wanted to get to Hayden's, but he hadn't responded. 20 minutes passed. Normally, Xander was quick to reply, at least with the few texts and calls we'd exchanged. I tried to come up with reasons why he might be delayed, but nothing seemed to make sense. Finally, my phone buzzed. I swiped it open. "Hayden, where are you?" I quickly typed back. "Me, supposed to get a ride from Xander." A few minutes passed before he replied. "Hayden, you haven't heard?" "Me, heard what?" Hayden's reply came slowly. I slumped on my bed, unease creeping in. "Hayden, he's in the hospital." My phone slipped from my hands in shock, and I scrambled to pick it up. "Me, what happened?" "Hayden, car accident." My heart dropped. That explained why Xander hadn't responded and why he wasn't in class. No matter how much I tried to tell myself otherwise, I felt worried. "Hayden, I'll come pick you up." I hesitated, worried for him but also torn. "Me? Is he okay?" "Hayden, yeah, we've already been to the hospital." Relief washed over me, though a part of me was frustrated that I hadn't been there. "Me, on second thought, Dre's gotta help me study for my exam." "Hayden, I guess I'll see you tomorrow then." I groaned and flopped my phone onto the bed, covering my face with my hands. Dre glanced over, but wisely didn't ask any questions. "What time do the buses run until?" I asked finally. "The buses? Is Xander not around to pick you up?" Dre asked. I didn't want to tell him about the accident, partly selfish, partly worried he'd make jokes about my concern for Xander. "He's not responding," I said. "And I don't want to bother Hayden either." Dre tapped his chin thoughtfully. "I'm pretty sure the buses run late. You'll probably catch the last one, though I'm not sure how you'll. All right, I interrupted, grabbing my phone and wallet. I'm going then. See you later. I hurried to the campus bus stop, shivering in the cold as I arrived just in time to check the schedule. The last bus would be here in 5 minutes. I took a seat on the bench, fidgeting, my mind racing. Why was I so eager to see Xander, of all people? I usually found him frustrating. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was worried about him. When the bus finally arrived, I climbed aboard and asked the driver, "Does this go to District Care Hospital?" "We'll pass by in about 10 minutes, he replied, and I quickly found a seat. The ride felt long. I tapped my foot anxiously, staring out the window at the passing scenery, imagining what might have happened. My mind drifted to the accident and everyone who might have been involved. Finally, the bus stopped in front of the hospital. I thanked the driver and rushed inside, feeling that familiar, uneasy feeling hospitals always gave me. I'd never liked them, ever since my mother had passed away. I remembered that day vividly. She had been in a car accident, and I hadn't been there immediately. By the time I arrived, it was too late. I never got to say goodbye, never got to tell her how much I loved her. Perhaps that was why I felt compelled to rush to Xander now. It wasn't just him, it was the fear of being too late, of not being there when it mattered most. At the front desk, I signed in and checked which room he was in. I hurried to the 5th floor, walking down the narrow hallway, glancing into rooms as I passed, memories of my mother and that hospital flooding my mind. Finally, I reached room 518. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what I might see. Peeking inside, relief flooded me. Xander was sleeping, with no visible injuries. I quietly sat beside his bed, careful not to wake him. I took a closer look, noticing the way the light caught his green eyes, the long lashes that made him look almost peaceful. I forced myself to look away, resting my head on my hands beside the bed, careful not to disturb him. Minutes passed until I felt a gentle touch in my hair. My head lifted automatically, and there he was, green eyes opening, looking at me with surprise. "Why are you here?" he asked softly. Chapter 25. I quickly pulled my gaze away from Xander and looked at him, a mixture of concern and curiosity in my eyes. "Why are you here?" I asked. He exhaled slowly, not breaking eye contact. "Car accident," he said simply. "But what about you? What happened, Xander?" I pressed. "I noticed you didn't show up to class and didn't answer my texts." He smirked faintly. "Sounds like you were worried about me." "Of course I was," I said firmly. "Now that I'm here, will you tell me what happened?" He rubbed his forehead with one hand, letting out a frustrated sigh. "Quit talking. I've got a headache." "Did you hit your head?" I asked, instinctively leaning closer. "Probably," he muttered. "Probably." I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "I don't remember, Jasper," he admitted with a small groan. I bit my lip and looked down, feeling a little embarrassed. He leaned back in bed, closing his eyes. Part of me thought, well, I could have stayed home if he's just going to sleep the whole time. Then, my mind whispered the truth I didn't want to admit. "You came because you were worried." I sighed and pushed my chair back to stand, figuring he seemed okay enough. "Where are you going?" His voice was deep, catching me slightly off guard. "You're sleeping," I replied, still standing. "And?" he asked, eyes slowly opening. "I'm not just going to sit here and watch you sleep." "That's weird," I said, rolling my eyes. "Just stay," he said simply, making me pause. "Okay," I muttered, easing back into the chair I had moved. I watched as he tried to sit up, his face tightening with pain. My hand shot out to help him, gently guiding his arm. "You're hurt," I said softly as he settled into a more comfortable position. "No kidding," he replied with a small, wry smile. "My car was hit from the side. Probably some bruised ribs." "That's going to hurt," I said, biting my lip. "Which is why you'll help me," he said with a teasing grin. "Me? What can I do for you?" I asked, suppressing a laugh. "You can start by moving my hair out of my eyes," he said. I frowned. "You have arms, Xander. I saw you raise them before." "Yeah, but it hurts to move them," he replied. And my hair's really bothering me right now. I sighed, standing and leaning over him. My fingers brushed his forehead as I moved his hair aside. His green eyes met mine, and my breath caught in my throat. Suddenly, he slid his hand into mine. Warmth shot up my arm, and I froze, eyes widening. I thought you couldn't move your arms, I whispered, embarrassed by my own reaction. I tried to pull away, but he held on. Xander, I said softly. Let go. Sit down, he instructed, guiding our hands onto the bed. Then I'll let go. I obeyed, watching as he adjusted his hand in mine. Another wave of warmth spread through me. Why are you doing this? I asked, raising our hands to show how tightly we were clasped. Because I want to, he said simply, with a hint of mischief. I sighed again, feeling my heart race. Xander grinned, and my stomach flipped. His smile had this effortless charm that made him seem so innocent. Cute even. Smile, Jasper, he said softly. What? Why? I asked, pursing my lips playfully. Like you did that one time, he replied. I've only seen you smile like that once. And? I asked, trying to play it cool. My goal isn't to make you happy with my smiles. He rolled his eyes, making me smirk. Just smile, you big idiot, he said. You're calling me an, I started, but he interrupted. It's attractive, Jasper, he said, laughing as his face lit up. My cheeks burned, and I quickly pulled my hand away, staring at the floor. Quit laughing, I mumbled. I've never heard that from anyone. He raised an eyebrow. No one's ever told you before? I guess not, I muttered. Xander leaned back in bed, silent for a moment. Then he asked, Is Hayden picking you up? No, I took the bus here. I'll take it back, I replied. He laughed softly. You really are an idiot. You dare say that again? I shot back, narrowing my eyes. The buses aren't running anymore, he said, grinning. It's too late. What? I exclaimed. He opened his arms, beckoning me closer. Come on. Chapter 26. My mouth dropped open. I'm not getting in bed with you. Xander's eyes sparkled as he grinned. Then where do you suppose you're going to sleep? Be grateful I'm even offering. This bed's barely big enough for me. I groaned to myself. This is ridiculous. Xander laughed, and the sound made my heart race. No, you're ridiculous. Who doesn't check the bus schedule ahead of time? Me, I admitted, cheeks warming. I didn't check it because, well, you've been on my mind the whole time. His grin widened. Jasper, I don't know what's going to happen to you if you keep saying stuff like that. What? I asked, flustered. Just, come here already. I sighed, realizing there was no escaping the situation. His arm was already laid across the pillow where my head was supposed to go. Move your arm, I said, hesitating. My goodness, Jasper, just get in here, Xander replied, waiting expectantly. So, I carefully slid into the bed next to him. Turning onto my side, my back faced him, but the warmth of his body pressed against mine. My head naturally rested against his arm. I see you chose me over Hayden. I shifted slightly, trying to think of an excuse, but my gaze fell into his light green eyes. My heart thumped loudly, and I felt my face heat up from the closeness. HM? It's not like what? He asked, raising an eyebrow. It's not. I hesitated. I faltered, overwhelmed by how close he was. Xander laughed softly. You can say you like me better than your other guy, you know. I won't tell him. If you weren't in such a fragile state right now, I'd seriously, never mind, I muttered, narrowing my eyes at him. Of course, he said with a playful smirk. I'll always be able to tease you, Jasper. I rolled my eyes. Whatever. But hey, Xander said softly, thanks for coming. I lifted my gaze to meet his. No problem. His hand reached up, brushing my hair aside. My breath caught as my eyes followed the movement down to his wrist, where faint scars were visible. I lifted my hand and gently traced the lines, careful not to look into his eyes. Don't do this to yourself, I murmured. I know, he said quietly. There aren't any new ones, right? I asked. He moved his arm slightly, letting my hand fall, then took it in his own again. I know, he repeated. Are you feeling better? I asked, squeezing his hand. I mean, I know the past still hurts, but are you at least okay? I'm okay, he said, inching closer. Are you sure? Yeah, he said, eyes locking with mine. There's someone who's been keeping my mind off things. I raised an eyebrow. There is? Who? He paused, looking up at the ceiling. Then he smiled faintly. He's an idiot. Bad temper, can't admit his feelings, and has a crush on his friend. Sounds unimpressive, I teased. Xander laughed. But he's always there when I need him. My chest tightened. Could he be talking about someone else? I tried to hide my irritation and gently pulled my hand away. Yet his hand found mine again, sliding fingers through mine and pulling me closer. What are you doing? I asked, wiggling slightly. Jasper, he said, smiling, you're dense sometimes. What? I should have expected it from someone who scored a 30 on his exam, he teased. 31, I corrected. What are you trying to say? Who do you think has been keeping my mind off things, Jasper? Who held me when I broke down? Who rushed to the hospital without hesitation? I froze. Because it's you. I went silent, my chest pounding. Xander, I whispered. I'm about to do something crazy. You're not leaving, are you? He asked. No, I said firmly, sitting up slightly. Your ribs hurt, right? I asked, glancing down at him. Yeah, like crazy, he admitted. Then I won't make you move, I said softly. But I couldn't resist. My fingers slid beneath his chin, lifting it gently as I met his gaze. I don't know what's happening, I whispered. Before he could respond, I leaned in and pressed my lips to his. Xander didn't hesitate, his hand rising to cradle my face, returning the kiss gently but with certainty. I pulled back slightly, heart racing. What am I doing? I whispered. Jasper, he said, his eyes soft. Finish what you started, I murmured, letting myself trust him completely. Chapter 27. You're joking, I said, my voice trembling slightly. You know I'm not, he replied, looking up at me with that familiar mischievous grin. Before I could ask anything, Xander gently tilted my head forward and pressed his lips to mine. This time, I didn't pull away. I ran my fingers through his hair as he kissed me, the connection sending a warmth through me I couldn't explain. I instinctively wrapped my hands around his, holding onto him. When we pulled apart, I leaned back against the bed, trying to catch my breath. Oh my gosh, I whispered. I knew it. That you like me? Xander asked, smirking. That I was losing my mind. I don't know, I admitted, covering my face with my hand. Wait, what? He asked, gently taking my hand and guiding it away from my face. There's a chance you like me? I froze, unsure of what to say. Hayden, I mumbled, almost to myself. I care about him, right? Are you seriously asking me that, Jasper? Xander said, raising an eyebrow. I don't know how you even manage to think about anyone else with your brain so full of everything. Excuse me? I asked, glaring at him. Your brain, he said, leaning back slightly. Clearly, you can't remember anything from lectures, yet somehow you have room for thoughts about both me and Hayden? You? I asked, bewildered. Since when are you part of my thoughts? Since I met you, he replied simply. Oh my goodness, Xander groaned. You really give me a headache sometimes. He rubbed his forehead, and I stayed quiet, unsure what to say. Jasper, he said after a pause, why did you kiss me first? I couldn't find the right words, so I whispered, sorry. Xander sat up, wincing slightly. Sorry. That's what you said when you kissed me back at your place, I reminded him. Oh right, he said, glancing down. But seriously, why did you do it? I hesitated before replying, well, why did you? It's your fault, he said simply. My fault? You kissed me first, Xander, I said, exasperated. But it's also your fault, he countered, his eyes softening. My chest races whenever I'm around you. I can't stop thinking about you. That's why I kissed you. So now, your turn. Why did you? I laughed nervously. How can you say all that without feeling awkward? You basically just admitted you like me. So what? He asked, tilting his head. Does it matter to you? I leaned over, gently pressing my shoulder against his. I lifted my hand to his face, making him meet my gaze. Of course it matters, I said. I held his hand and brought it to my chest. Do you feel that? Sure, I interrupted. I feel the same. My heart races whenever I'm near you. The kiss? I couldn't control it. You just stir something in me. Xander smiled and shifted, brushing his hand over my neck. I'm exhausted. I laughed softly, holding his hand. Then go to sleep. I'm not going anywhere. But I want to finish this conversation, he said, eyes still locked on mine. Later, I whispered. I'm tired too. He sighed, dropping his hand, and lay back on the bed. I softly brushed his hair from his forehead as he closed his eyes. I still have more to say, he murmured, his voice low and tired. Say it in the morning, I replied, curling up beside him. Okay, he said, his lips curving into a faint smile. Good night, I whispered, closing my eyes. Dream of me, he added softly. Idiot, I muttered, a smile tugging at my lips. That night, Xander stayed in my dreams. The next morning, sunlight poured into the hospital room, warming my stiff, tired body. I hadn't even opened my eyes when I heard a few nurses enter. Should we wake them? Chapter 28. My eyes groggily opened, trying to figure out where I was. Stretching my limbs felt impossible. Then I realized why. I was lying next to Xander Payton. My arm was draped across his chest, my head resting on his outstretched arm. Panic shot through me. I quickly pulled my arm away and pushed myself up, careful not to wake him. Ah, I whispered, remembering last night's events and our unfinished conversation. The nurses behind their clipboards giggled softly, and I rolled my eyes. I needed to get out before facing Xander became even more awkward. As I tried to climb out of bed, I felt a warm hand slip into mine. I froze and looked at him. His eyes were still closed as he held on to me. Not yet, he whispered. My heart raced. What? I stammered. His eyes slowly opened, revealing their bright green color. Heat rushed to my cheeks as I looked down at him. We're not done, Jasper, Xander said. Did you really think I'd forget our conversation so easily? No, I replied, nervously touching the back of my neck. But I should get back. The nurses. They can wait, he interrupted, eyes fixed on mine. The nurses giggled once more before leaving. I sighed. They need to check on you, idiot, I said, trying to tease him. How else will you heal? I'm fine, he replied, tugging my hand gently. I almost fell forward onto his chest but caught myself in time, placing my hands on either side of his head. He cupped my face with his hand and I froze. Jasper, he said softly. You stir me up. I remembered saying the same to him last night. Do I? I whispered, smiling. His thumb brushed across my lips, sending a flutter through me. So much, Jasper. My heart raced as I stared at him. Whenever I'm with you, he continued, I can't stop thinking about you. And when we're apart, I couldn't help it. And me too, I admitted, surprised. His eyebrows shot up, and a wide grin spread across his face. I've felt this way since the first day I met you, he said, his thumb gently brushing my cheek. I knew I wouldn't be able to leave you alone. You really annoyed me that day, I admitted, and he laughed, making my heart skip a beat. You annoy me all the time, he said. But it doesn't matter. From? I asked. From caring, he said, voice softening. All those times you talked about Hayden, I was jealous. I cared more than I wanted to admit. My eyes widened. He leaned closer, resting his forehead against mine. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me, and he did, softly, gently. I melted into it, kissing him back. We pulled away for a breath, hearts racing. Jasper, Xander whispered. I'm in love with you. My chest stopped. Me too, I said softly. I'm crazy about you, Xander. He smiled, and I couldn't help but smile back. There it is, he said. What? I asked. That smile, he said. The one that's all yours. I laughed softly. You really have no filter, do you? You're the only one I say these things to, he replied, grinning. I leaned down and pressed a quick kiss to his forehead. Anytime you need me, I'll be here. Xander flushed, making me laugh even more. You're cute, I teased. Be quiet, he muttered, covering his face with his hand as I laughed. I'll see you later, I said, climbing out of bed. Hurry up and heal, Xander. I had to hold myself back today because of your ribs. I didn't wait for a reply. As I headed back to the bus stop, it hit me. I was in love with Xander Payton. And he loved me back. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.